Emily called on a Thursday evening, breathless with an excitement I hadn't heard from her in years. "David proposed," she said. Then, before I could even fully congratulate her, she asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Ryan, would you be okay if I asked Jake to walk me down the aisle?" My name is Ryan Mitchell, and this is the story of the unconventional request that turned my 14-year-old son into the man who'd give his own mother away. "He said yes?" I asked, genuinely delighted for her. "Emily, that's wonderful. Congratulations." "Last night, at the restaurant where we had our first date," she said, still catching her breath from excitement. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell Jake all day, and then this idea just kept coming back to me, and I wanted to run it by you first, out of respect." "Walking you down the aisle," I repeated. "Emily, that's usually reserved for fathers or close family. Are you sure?" "That's exactly why I want it to be Jake," she said. "My own father passed when I was young, you know that. But watching Jake grow into the thoughtful, steady person he's become, especially these last few years, he feels like the right person to walk beside me into this next chapter, if that's something you're comfortable with." I sat with the question for a moment, checking in honestly with myself before responding. Years earlier, a request like this might have stirred something complicated in me. Territorial feelings about Jake's role, old wounds about Emily, and everything that had happened between us. Now, mostly, I just felt something quiet and warm settle in my chest. "I think that's a beautiful idea," I told her honestly. "But it's Jake's decision to make, not mine. Do you want me to mention it to him, or would you rather ask him yourself?" "I'd like to ask him myself," Emily said. "If that's all right. This feels like something I should ask him directly." Emily came by that weekend, finding Jake in the backyard, shooting baskets at the hoop we'd installed years earlier. I watched from the kitchen window, giving them space as she approached him. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched Jake's expression shift from casual curiosity to visible shock, then to something softer, more overwhelmed as Emily continued speaking. He came inside a few minutes later, Emily trailing behind him, both of them looking slightly emotional. "Papa," Jake said, "Mom just asked me something kind of big." "I heard," I said gently. "What do you think?" "I think," he paused, glancing at Emily, then back at me. "I think I want to do it. Is that okay? I know it's usually a dad's job." "Jake," I said, sitting down across from him. "This isn't about replacing anyone or filling a role that isn't yours to fill. Your mom asked you because of who you specifically are to her, not because she's looking for a stand-in father figure. That's an important difference." "That's exactly what I told him," Emily added. "Jake, you're not filling a gap. You're the person I actually want beside me for this. There's a real difference between those two things." Jake nodded slowly, some of the earlier uncertainty easing from his expression. "Okay, then yeah, I really want to do it. I just wanted to make sure it wouldn't be weird for you, Papa." "It's not weird at all," I told him, and meant it completely. "I think it's going to be one of the most meaningful things you've ever done." Over the following months, Jake took his role seriously in a way that quietly moved everyone around him. He asked Sarah for advice on how to walk properly with someone on his arm without rushing. He practiced with Emily twice in the backyard, working out the pacing and the small details neither of them had considered beforehand. "Should I say something to her right before we start walking?" he asked Sarah one evening, clearly overthinking every detail. "Or is that too much?" "Whatever feels genuine to you," Sarah told him. "This isn't about doing it perfectly. It's about doing it as yourself." I found him in his room one night before the wedding, reading over some notes he'd apparently written for himself, though he quickly tucked them away when he noticed me in the doorway. "Notes?" I asked, smiling. "Just some things I want to remember to say to her before we start walking," he admitted, slightly embarrassed. "I don't want to forget in the moment." Aha. The wedding was small, warm, held at a garden venue that suited Emily's more understated taste. I sat in the second row beside Sarah and Lily, watching as the music began and the doors opened. Jake appeared first, tall now, wearing a suit that fit him with a maturity that still occasionally caught me off guard. Emily on his arm, radiant and visibly emotional already. Halfway down the aisle, I watched Jake lean slightly toward her, saying something quiet that made Emily's composure briefly crack into fresh tears. Whatever he'd written in those private notes, he'd apparently decided the moment itself called for something spoken directly from the heart instead. They reached the front together, and Jake carefully placed Emily's hand into David's, stepping back with a small, proud smile before taking his seat beside us. At the reception, I finally got a chance to ask him what he'd said to her on the walk down the aisle. "I told her I was really glad she got a second chance at this," Jake said, "and that I hoped she knew how proud I was of everything she'd worked on to get to be standing there today, happy, for real." "That's a pretty remarkable thing to say to your mother on her wedding day," I told him. "I meant it," Jake said simply. "She worked really hard to become the person walking down that aisle today. I wanted her to know I noticed." Watching my son walk his mother down the aisle, watching the quiet, earned pride on both their faces, I thought about how far our family had traveled to arrive at an afternoon like this one. Years of hurt, slow rebuilding, and now, genuine celebration. All of us gathered together without a trace of old bitterness in the room. If you've ever watched someone you love become the person they always had the potential to be, if you've ever needed proof that healing, given enough time and effort, actually leads somewhere real, I want you to know, sometimes the most unconventional family roles turn out to be exactly the right ones. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. And if you have a story of your own, share it below. It might just become our next episode. This is Silent Love. And this was a story about walking someone home into a new beginning.